welcome to another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me. I have a real, one of the most dynamic people I know who focuses on health and wellness from a holistic lens. My special guest today is Aric Lee, owner of the world-class fitness lifestyle company Evolve to Fit. Aric, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to this. So, tell us your story about growing up as a child, first gen born in America of immigrant parents. What was that like going through the U.S. education system, the K through 12 system specifically?
So I was born in Flushing, Queens, New York, and I was raised by my father.
Hmm.
So it's me and my dad for most of my young life, up
Hmm.
until, I don't know, maybe the teens. I went to school in Woodside, New York. So I went
Hmm.
to elementary school, which is first grade through sixth grade.
Hmm.
And it was just a local elementary school in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
And from what I remember, I mean, I had a good time. I was a kid. Back
Yeah.
when I was growing up, it was the latchkey kids and the, Gen X. So I was able to pretty much do whatever I wanted to. Number one, because
Yeah.
single dad, never
Yeah.
saw him. So I
Yeah.
was home alone a lot,
Hmm.
starting from the
Hmm.
age of maybe 7 years old on.
Hmm.
Uh, Hanging out till 2, 3 in the morning in front of my block right there with
Yeah.
all the other neighborhood kids. It's just a
Yeah.
different time.
And this is the 80s in New York City, which is
Yeah.
a different time.
Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up at 7, 8, I was taking the train by myself, going
Right.
everywhere where by myself, hanging out with
Yeah.
friends by ourselves. We used to have commercials on the television at 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? So it was
Right.
not unique to my growing up. It was just kind of a cultural phenomenon for the Gen Xers that lived in the big cities. They got to just have free reign.
Yeah. So can you tell us some of the like the structure that was in place and sort of your dad's relationship with you as you were going through school? Was your dad someone who like walked you to school? Did he check in with the teachers? Did he check your homework? Like what was that like?
I mean, my dad was up before I got up and home after I went to bed. So I
Hmm.
basically never saw him. The number one rule was just do well in school
Hmm.
and have any problems. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much how it was. I got good grades, but I also had free reign growing up as well. So as
Yeah.
long as I didn't do, obviously things that I shouldn't be doing,
Right.
or importantly, if I didn't get caught, then I was good. Good.
And your dad didn't really interact much with the school. You're pretty much independent going to school as long as you got your grades and he would check in and say, okay, let's evaluate where we are here. Quarter one. Okay, everything checks out as you were.
Yeah, and it wasn't even that serious. It was
Yeah,
just like, here's my card, and as long as I didn't fail anything and I
yeah,
did well, it was all good. So I was,
yeah.
you know, I I was a nerd
Hmm.
growing up, and I'm proudly one now too. But
Yeah,
it was just, yeah, just do well in school, and you won't get in trouble, and that was enough
yeah,
incentive because you don't want to piss off a Korean dad, or any
yeah,
dad for that
yeah,
matter, any
yeah,
immigrant dad
yeah,
coming to this
yeah,
country. You don't want to piss
yeah.
them off.
Not at all. So let me ask you this. So as you're going to school and you're pretty much independent, like going through this process, who are the adults like at school? Are there teachers? Are there counselors? Are there parents of other friends who are kind of like helping you and supporting you? Or you just this is just a solo mission, you just got your head down and
I
you're
mean,
going for it.
I definitely had teachers I absolutely loved, but as far
Hmm.
as help outside, I mean, I would go to my friend's house after school, and for instance, I remember one friend, his parents owned a laundromat about two or
Hmm.
three blocks away from my home,
Hmm.
our little apartment in Woodside,
Hmm.
and I would just go over there and I would help fold clothes, I would sweep and
Hmm.
mop, and they would give me
Hmm.
money and feed me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was kind of like the orphan kid that kind
Yeah.
of did extra work. I hung
Yeah.
out with the family, they treated me really well. And then there's a
Yeah.
lot of instances like that.
Yeah.
And then there was another couple of occasions, but one occasion, my dad dropped me off to his friends, a couple, a childless couple,
Hmm.
and I would stay with them for long periods of time, months,
Yeah.
maybe up to a year. And I wouldn't see my father for 5, 6 months at a time. He was off working, doing what he
Yeah.
needed to do.
Right.
And so, yeah, I essentially got adopted for a little bit. And
Yeah.
that happened a few times in my life where
Yeah.
he dropped off somewhere. I don't know how he
Yeah.
worked it out. I'm sure he
Yeah.
has a good spiel, and he was able to just kind of palm me off for a little bit while he
Yeah.
went to work. So that happened
Yeah.
multiple times throughout my childhood.
Gotcha. Was your dad like traveling? Did you know what he was doing? Was he like going
Well,
out of town or?
he had a contracting company, like a
Hmm.
construction, and
Yeah.
he was an entrepreneur himself.
Yeah.
And at one point, I guess he built one of the largest construction companies in all of New York City for a while. So he's
Okay.
very well connected.
Yeah. And
But
busy.
yeah, very busy. I never,
Yeah.
like I said, sometimes I wouldn't see him for months at a time.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a real pivotal moment in my childhood where I was being raised by other families or other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So in a sense, you're being sort of nurtured and supported by a community that your dad is helping to, like stitch together. But at the same time, like that, like your natural born family, like you're losing, like that's not there. So how are you
Yeah.
dealing with that? Yeah,
I mean, I miss my dad a lot,
Yeah.
but our relation, he is a very stern kind of, he doesn't speak much,
Yeah.
doesn't emote as much unless it's anger. It's
Yeah.
like old school. It's
Yeah.
old school. It's just an
Yeah.
old school vibe. Much softer now. I can
Hmm.
mess around with him and joke around, and
Yeah.
I do. But growing up, it was like you just didn't want to piss pops off
Yeah. I got
because
you, man.
he's
So
obviously busy, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is, it's a great example to set when you know your parents are out there just working hard and doing their best to, ultimately provide the best life for you also. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
not just doing
absolutely.
it for themselves. Yeah.
And you know what I found out when I was 40? My dad, or I don't know who told me, maybe it was my aunt, but he tried to drop me off at an orphanage in South Korea, but
Uh-huh.
they wouldn't take me because I was an American citizen.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I wasn't put up for adoption in Korea. And
Wow.
then
Yeah,
he had to
man.
take me. He had to take me
Yeah.
back, and
Yeah.
he had to raise me by himself. I can't
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
in the 1970s being a single dad in New
Yeah.
York City
Yeah,
with
man.
a job that you work 7 days a week trying to raise your
Yeah.
kid. So there
Yeah.
was many a times where I would pack all my things in a garbage bag and we
Hmm.
uh, hop out on rent because we couldn't afford it at the time. So
Yeah.
we would move
Yeah.
constantly, like gypsies almost.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm so comfortable I know, being anywhere, living in any
Yeah.
situation, whether we live
Yeah.
in a trailer with no furniture or a huge house with all the fixings,
Yeah.
either way, I'm just going to be comfortable because I remember what it was like to not have things and be okay.
So growing up, so even like your dad's siblings, like aunts and uncles, you really had no family that was around.
No, it was just
No
my
close
dad and
family.
I.
Hmm.
I did have, so later on, my father had a relationship with another woman with two kids, and
Hmm.
they were also Korean.
Yeah.
And she had separated with her husband. And so in the teens, and they were around when I was, much younger as well, like, five, I guess the family knew my biological mother. I'd have no memory of her, but they knew me while I was in the womb. So this is a
Yeah.
family that was close to us.
Yeah.
And then eventually my dad and this woman got together and they had their kids.
Yeah.
This is who I call mom now.
Yeah.
And her kids are now my brother, my sister. So when
Right.
anybody asks me if I have family,
Yeah.
yeah, I got my mom, my dad, my brother, my
Yeah.
sister. But in
Gotcha.
reality, it's just my dad and I are the
Yeah.
blood.
So I want to transition into like your high school years, right? Which high school did you go to? And as you're going through high school, like what sort of thoughts are starting to frame in your head about what your life is going to be like after high school?
So I went to a high school called Bronx High School of Science. It's a school where you have to take a test to get into. It's one of like three
Yep.
schools you get into,
Yep. Yep.
and
We know it really well, Eric. It's not.
oh,
It's
do
not
you?
a. It's not a. Yeah. Everyone
Uh,
knows Bronx Science, man. It's
I'm
world
I'm
renowned.
surprised it's still a household name, I guess.
Yeah. It's like
But
getting into Harvard.
yeah. So all that paid off, the studying and
Hmm.
making sure my grades were good.
Yeah.
I got into science, and then I didn't realize that you can actually cut classes. So that's when
Yeah.
I discovered that you
Yeah.
didn't, because I had perfect attendance like pretty much all through my whole
Yeah.
life. Even when I was
Yeah.
sick, I went to school.
Yeah.
And when I got to high school, it was more independent.
Hmm.
So there wasn't as much, I wouldn't say guidance, but it was just a different
Yeah.
than elementary or middle school, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
hold on one second.
yeah,
We can't gloss over this, right? Because first of all, getting into Bronx Science, it's a process to do that, right? Like you have to
yeah,
take a it's like you have to take an entrance exam,
yeah.
right? And then so where did that idea come from? Like as you're in middle school,
Um,
like who's telling you, like how are you making a decision that this is where I'm going to go to? Because this is like a magnet high school. This is not just your regular neighborhood high school. This is a high school that everybody in the five boroughs is trying to get into.
yeah, I think it was just expected.
Okay.
It wasn't like a big deal. You gotta go here or there. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, you're just gonna take a test and you're gonna do well, and then you're gonna go to one of these three schools.
Yeah.
And at the time, my sister was at science, and
Hmm.
my brother was at tech.
Hmm.
So it was just kind of like follow along. It wasn't like a big
Gotcha,
deal
gotcha,
to
gotcha.
us. It was
Okay,
just like you're
okay.
gonna do well on the test, and you're gonna get in. And that's
Yeah. This is what
I
we do.
studied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. All right, so now you're at Bronx Science. You figure out you can cut class. What are we thinking about life after Bronx Science?
Probably early on, I don't think I really was thinking beyond high school. I It was back then it was just understood that you're going to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
So that was already just kind of in the background. So the
Mm-hmm.
whole time you're there, you're just working to get into a good college. And
Mm-hmm.
from there, who knows? I didn't really know what I wanted to do in high school. I don't think most people do. They have an idea of what sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go early on, I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
adjusting. It was
Okay.
like a 90-minute, one-way trip to high school and back every
Yeah.
day. 90
Yeah.
minutes to 2 hours every
Yeah.
day. And I also played a couple of sports. I did swimming for a year, and then I was varsity volleyball all 4 years. So
Mm-hmm.
would finish school
Yeah.
3:15, practice until 7 p.m., then take the train all the way home, get home by 8:30. The whole time you got to do your schoolwork, you got to
Mm-hmm.
obviously take care of your business and your projects.
Right.
And that was just expected at that high school, high
Mm-hmm.
performers for the most part. And everybody is doing the same thing. They're
Right.
commuting or they're on teams and they're doing
Right.
after school clubs. So it was
Mm-hmm.
thinking back on it, I'm like, wow, I mean, that's a lot of work. But while I was doing it, it just was the norm and I didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just had to go home and do work. So it just
Yeah.
made sense to do extracurricular activities. Number one, to boost your, ability to get into college. That was a
Mm-hmm.
big one. But
Mm-hmm.
also it was just fun. I love volleyball. I love
Yeah.
sports. So
Yeah. And so were you always active, like growing up, like what other things you did outside of those structured activities that sort of kept you active?
yeah, growing up, early on, going back to when I was like 7 on to like middle
Yeah.
school, I was playing all the time. I was out
Yeah.
when the sun was, especially in the summer, the sun's up,
Mm-hmm.
you're out with your friends on your
Mm-hmm.
bikes or
Yeah.
whatever, and then you come home late at night. And so we
Yeah.
were always playing. We were playing, baseball, football, running
Yeah.
around on our
Yeah.
bikes, playing handball.
All, of
We
course.
also we had this game called Moonies and a
Yeah.
game called Suicide. Not too many people remember this, but basically you take a rubber ball, you toss it against a concrete wall, it would fly up in the air. You try to catch it, and if you
Yeah.
dropped it, you'd have to run to the wall before someone grabbed the ball and threw it at your butt or your head
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to hit you. So it's a lot of, quick
Yeah.
active moves. So we were always athletic. We
Yeah.
just played constantly. And we had
Right.
recess too in school, which I guess
Mm-hmm.
they don't have too much of now, but
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of fun as well.
So as you're getting ready to leave high school, what's going through your head? How are you planning for that? It's your senior year. You're like, okay, I'm applying to colleges, and what's the process at this point?
I mean, I was trying to figure out where my grades were okay. They were like a B, but
Mm-hmm.
my SATs were pretty good. So I thought, I had a good chance. I only applied to a couple of places, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I applied to West Point,
Mm-hmm.
and the other place I applied to was a place called Geneseo, which is a state university of New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my senator or my congressman's recommendation
Mm-hmm.
to, and I guess they only give one or a few, and if you get your recommendation from your local senator or your congressman or
Hmm.
representative, then pretty much you're a shoo-in to get in. Now, I only applied because I knew my dad wanted me to go somewhere like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think I really wanted to go, but I
right.
went through the whole process. I did the test.
Yeah.
Like I said, I did the interview, and the thing I failed was my vision test. So I
Mm.
didn't do everything I needed to make sure that they knew I was correctable to 2020. So
Yeah.
in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't, go that route,
Yeah.
um, because who knows where I'd be right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm very happy with where I am now. But
Yeah.
yeah, that process back then, it was just like, I'm just going to apply to a couple schools. One is my
Yeah.
like reach, one is
Yeah.
my safety, and that's
Yeah.
just how I took it.
Yeah.
Now, all my other friends applying to like 20 schools, they
Right.
also had the resources to pay for college
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
So that's why the state university made sense instead of going
Right.
to a like I really wanted to go to a place called Wesleyan in
Mm.
Massachusetts. I
Mm-hmm.
visited. I loved the campus. They had a lot of
Yeah.
the stuff I wanted, but I mean, they realistically could not afford it. So, and
Right.
I'm not asking my dad to pay for that.
I know. Okay. So then you leave Bronx Science and where are you?
I'm in Geneseo. So now I'm in
Mm-hmm.
upstate New York,
Mm-hmm.
completely 180 degrees different than New
Yeah.
York City, where we had
Right.
multiculturalism and,
Yeah.
the most diverse. I lived in the most diverse place in all of the world
Mm-hmm.
to, completely different place in Western New York. And
Mm-hmm.
it did take a couple of years to really feel comfortable. I
Yeah.
almost like flunked out. That's
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
it was just a different world. But I wanted to go there for that experience because my other friends were going to, the same old places,
Yeah.
and I wanted a change, like a
Yeah.
complete change. And so I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. It's a different New York there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Th-
It's
Than the
farm
than the one
country.
than the one you were used to.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't even sleep for the first semester because I was used to live by the train tracks. So
Yeah.
that put me to sleep. And then when I
Yeah.
got there, it was complete silence.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you smell this fertilizer and you're like,
Yeah.
what is this? And
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
different world.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So now you're in college. What are you majoring in? How did you choose the major? And what are you thinking you're going to be doing once you don't flunk out and you kind of settle in after those 2 years?
But I started on the biomathematics track. And the only
Mm-hmm.
reason I did that was because that's what I thought I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
After a couple of years, I was like, I don't want to do this. So I switched
Mm-hmm.
majors quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I went to poli-sci business, and I was like, I don't like this either. So then
Mm-hmm.
I finally settled on English. I was a big reader growing up. I
Mm-hmm.
just had a lot of spare time by myself. So it's
Yeah.
either play or read. And those are my two
Mm-hmm.
obsessions.
Gotcha.
So I went the English route, and then sociology just kind of made sense too,
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know, something about understanding populations and why things are and statistics
Mm-hmm.
and why groups move in certain patterns. Like this is all stuff that I wanted to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so my focus was on non-Western literature for English. So
Mm-hmm.
Harlem Renaissance, a lot of African literature,
Mm-hmm.
along with like the classics and stuff. But I focused away, I studied people like Salman Rushdie
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of non-traditional lit. And then the sociology route, I kind of focused on crime and punishment
Mm-hmm.
and inequality, class, all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That kind of drew
Yeah.
me in.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the end, I only gave effort to the things I wanted to give effort to.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that didn't interest me, I just kind of quickly just kind of shed.
Yeah.
And so college was interesting. It was just a way to find what I really liked in the college curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure if it was worth it. Now that I
Yeah.
think about it,
Yeah.
because you can get a
Yeah.
better education, you know, not doing a track that someone tells you this is what you have to do. I don't like
Right.
that,
Right. Yeah.
being stuck like that or
Yeah.
told that this is the
Yeah.
way you got to do it.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I left the fire department as well.
Yeah. 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 So I think it's apropos, right? Because I think what you're describing really is you said you don't like being told, and what I hear from you, this is what I'm hearing. What I can infer from that is like you prefer to just evolve to fit into what fits you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should always go towards what feels good in your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
What your mind, what you're like, where you're really pulled towards. And
Right.
that's
Right.
what I did. I mean, don't get me wrong, I take personal responsibility for my grades. I did,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
a lot of times I didn't go to class and I was
Yeah.
doing other stupid things
Yeah.
or just not being productive.
Yeah.
But now looking back, I realize I don't think I challenged myself to
Yeah.
find the things that was really interesting, but also I wasn't challenged by the curriculum a lot of the time by the
Yeah.
syllabus and the curriculum and what I was
Yeah.
learning or
Right.
told what was important to learn. I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't need this. And I would just
Yeah.
dismiss it. I didn't want to
Yeah.
waste time.
Yeah. And something that doesn't interest you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Okay.
torture. And we do that here as adults, right? And
Yeah.
we work in jobs we don't like and we just get used to it. And
Yeah.
now it's about paying bills and
Mm-hmm.
taking care of responsibilities, which is great. You have to do that if you have a family, but
Yeah.
there is another way,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's
And you're harming,
uncomfortable.
yeah, and you're harming yourself doing something that you find, dreadful or distasteful,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Okay. So we get out of we finish from school. Where do we go? Like, what's the first career that we're exploring and that we're going into out of college?
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I needed something that if I went home every day, I would be comfortable like saying I did a good job. So it had to be about helping people. Now, what did that mean? What does that mean? I had no clue. But I was
Right.
looking out west for
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit work. So I started
Mm-hmm.
with like working with kids and
Mm-hmm.
looking for any kind of educational opportunities, even though I wasn't a teacher.
Right.
Uh, and at the time, I was a super senior, super senior. So I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
stayed 5.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
wound up becoming a townie. So I wound up living in the town that I
Right.
went to college and working in the town. Um, I ran
Mm-hmm.
a local daycare for a couple of
Okay.
years as a daycare director. And I also worked at the local pizza shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I also did some construction, like
Yeah.
putting office cubicles together,
Yeah.
paychecks and these
Yeah.
like people moving. And, I'm just thinking, man, I wouldn't want to be working in this office, sitting in
Yeah.
these chairs. Meanwhile, I'm working 18 hours a day,
Yeah.
unloading and loading, putting all this stuff together. But it was good. It was
Yeah.
manual labor, it was honest work.
Yeah.
Um, but then what happened during the time I was making pretty good money doing construction, I actually had a hate crime incident where I was jumped by seven white dudes, locals, and they pretty much almost killed me. And they,
Oh
get
no.
beating me
Yeah.
down, got me
Yeah.
down, started stomping on me. What happened was I actually wound up breaking my arm. So I've got screws and plates here as well.
Wow.
They're still here.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge court case. That was actually the last court case before the federal hate crime law came into passing. So I think after
Mm.
my case, that who knows if it had any impact, but it was just the
Right.
timing
Right.
was right after that. It was a 5 year minimum sentence for
Yeah.
anybody convicted of a hate crime. So I couldn't work construction anymore because I had a shattered
Yeah.
arm. So
Yeah.
then that's when I found the daycare
Mm-hmm.
position. And this was a friend of mine, a townie friend that ran this
Mm-hmm.
daycare. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow I talked to her and she asked if I wanted to work for her. And I said yes. And then eventually that turned into that director position.
Mm-hmm.
And all this time too, 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
2001.
Yeah.
That's right around after I graduated. So I was already graduated, but that's the planted seed of, hey, man, I might want to go into the military, fire, or police.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
was kind of thinking about the Marines and doing JAG.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was, years before I actually made that switch. But that's where that idea was planted about helping.
Gotcha.
I
Gotcha.
needed a job that I can go home every day. My conscience was clear.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So is this what led you down to becoming a firefighter?
So yeah, yeah, sort of. So after college, after I broke my arm, I ran the
Yeah.
daycare for a while. I was like, we need to get out of here. And at the time, I was dating someone that was a few years below me. She was still in school, but just graduating. And
Mm-hmm.
her family lived in north of Albany. So the
Mm.
timing kind of all worked out to where we're like,
Yeah.
let's just go by your parents. And
Yeah.
so I moved out to Schenectady
Mm-hmm.
in New York, upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
and I found a job doing nonprofit work. So
Okay.
now we're moving into the office setting
Yeah.
where I'm helping like shut-in seniors and doing
Mm-hmm.
like programs, like social programs for those that need it. And then, I didn't like that job, so I went to another job working with developmentally disabled kids and adults,
Mm-hmm.
creating and running after-school programs for these kids that need supervision and have like special needs. So I did
Mm-hmm.
that for about 5 or 6 years over
Okay.
there. But it got to a point where I just didn't like the work I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I used to blame the work, but it wasn't. It was just, when you're not doing something that you're passionate about, you just
Yeah.
wither away and
Absolutely.
just collecting a
Absolutely.
paycheck
Yeah.
and wanting to pay bills, which is fine, like I said. But, it got to a point where I hated going in every morning. I would wake up and just like, oh, and I would have
Yeah.
a stomach ache.
Yeah.
That eventually led me to, me not wanting to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Then I, started eating like crap to self-medicate, drinking
Mm-hmm.
more, drinking
Yeah.
beer.
Yeah.
My health started going to crap. And then
Yeah.
that's when the symptoms of that ulcerative colitis, the autoimmune disease, started
Mm.
happening where I was bleeding
Mm.
constantly after eating.
Mm. Yeah.
Got the diagnosis, and in 2002 or somewhere around there is when they told me I had a chronic disease.
So how did you work your way out of that?
So I dealt with that. They gave me medications that had to be on powerful, like anti-inflammatories and
Mm-hmm.
not the steroids that destroy your body kind of deal. And I realized I needed to make a change because I could not stay at these jobs that I just didn't want to be at. And a
Right.
buddy of mine, a college buddy, is a fraternity brother from
Mm-hmm.
Geneseo. He was living down in Alexandria. He was a PG County fireman. And
Mm.
we were talking, and he said, "Dude, why don't you come on down? We're hiring. Come visit me, check this place out, and then why don't you just apply?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So
Yeah.
I flew down here. Girlfriend at the time got me tickets and said, "Go visit your friend." So I did. I came down. I
Yeah.
loved it. He seemed to be doing really well and really loving the job. So
Yeah.
that started the year process of getting out of my old job and into the new job. And it's funny, I made that decision like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to get this
Mm.
job. I
Yeah.
didn't know any better that I was competing against like thousands of other people for 45 spots.
Right.
But as soon as I made that decision, I completely changed everything, my nutrition. I started working
Mm-hmm.
out again regularly, almost daily.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, also, that's right. I had insurance for the first time, and I knew I had a knee that was messed up, and it turned out I tore all the ligaments in my knee years ago. I just never got a checkup because I didn't have insurance to pay
Wow.
for it. So
Wow.
for 2 or 3 years, I was walking around with a completely obliterated knee and then in my head, I was like, when I get my first salary job, I'm going to use the insurance to repair my knee. So that was one of the
Yeah.
first things I had to do.
Yeah.
And then rehabbing from that and also just rebuilding my body. It
Yeah.
was a year out, and I said, I'm going to take this year, I'm going to work my butt off and get in
Mm-hmm.
shape, in better shape. I'm going to ace this test. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's exactly what happened. I got in really good shape. I flew down here a couple times to do the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if I got the job, but I needed to put in my 2 weeks so that I could collect the vacation that I built up. I needed that
Mm-hmm.
cash to move from
Right.
where we
Right.
were to here.
Gotcha.
So I called and I kept calling. I was like, look, I gotta put in my 2 weeks notice. Is there any way?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a shot at this? And the lady on the other line was like, let's just say you have a 99.9% chance that you might get hired. And I was like,
Wow.
that's good enough for me. And that
Yeah.
wasn't a sure, that wasn't a
Yeah.
yes, but I
Yeah.
put in my 2 weeks and
Yeah.
it worked out. And then, yeah, I got the letter, I got the phone call. Hey, you got to be in Virginia in 2 weeks. And
Okay.
so I just found a place online. I'd never seen the place. I just found it on Craigslist or something
Yeah.
and just paid for it and just moved down. And in the span of like 2 weeks, we packed up everything and moved down here together.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I had no idea that's how you found your way into becoming a firefighter. So now that you're a firefighter, tell me what's the first day on the job like? Like what's the first like your first major memory of being a firefighter? Like this is like your
Uh,
welcome to being a firefighter moment.
Probably this is before I was officially released, but you do ride-alongs towards the end. And so I was
Hmm.
doing a ride along, and we found uh, elderly lady unconscious, not breathing. So that was my
Hmm.
first call, doing CPR on
Hmm.
this elderly lady while holding onto the ambulance and just pumping one arm. And that's my first memory. And I remember praying for this lady because it was my
Yeah.
first time like having to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm just pumping and I'm praying for her and I'm hoping she's okay. She didn't make it, but
Yeah.
that's kind of normal for
Yeah.
the job that you do where,
Yeah.
at that age. But yeah, I remember that was a distinct memory of mine. And
Yeah.
it was different because the other professionals in the back, my fellow firemen and paramedics, it was they were so used to it and they're nonchalant about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't mesh with my first experience. It was completely different because I wasn't used to it. But
Yeah.
now I realize doing the job after doing the job for so long, that's the way we
Right.
protect ourselves and our psyche, is we
Yeah.
can't be
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And that was going to be my follow-up question, right? Because it is it's a little bit different, right? Like norm, like regular people who get up and go to work, office job or whatever job you have, you're not really encountering these sort of life-threatening situations. So my question for you is, like you said, you had to protect yourself by kind of distancing yourself and keeping your emotions in check. What sort of self-care did you have to like employ while doing, being a firefighter? Like what did you have to do to kind
Um,
of when you got home?
I had a second job right away.
Mm-hmm.
So before graduating the fire department, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks prior to graduation, I
Mm-hmm.
also, at the same time, I was becoming an EMT and learning that curriculum. I thought it would be smart to get my personal training certification at the same time because I had
Mm.
just been through a
Yeah.
year of training myself. And I
Yeah.
had been training prior to that. I have a long history of just like physical training
Hmm.
and the biology and all that stuff kind of made sense to put together. So I was
Hmm.
studying for a really uh, pretty well-known certification and it was an 800-page textbook. And
Hmm.
I'm also reading like, 4,000 pages of EMT stuff at the same
Hmm.
time together.
Right, right, right.
So I just filled my time with
Yeah,
that kind of education. So self-care wise, man, I don't know. I don't know if I really did anything
yeah,
specific. I was just on the go all the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Um, I don't know I guess that comes from just growing up, but it just made sense to
yeah,
have a side gig because
yeah,
if you go on shift work, you're off for 3 days.
exactly.
So, a lot of the smart uh, shift workers, firemen, they have second careers doing. My
Yeah,
tax person is a battalion chief,
yeah,
right now. He still
yeah,
works for the department. He does my
yeah.
taxes. So
Gotcha.
people have side hustles
Yeah,
as firemen just to be able to pay for their lifestyle.
right.
Uh, and yeah, it was just a natural offshoot to do physical training. And preventative medicine is really what that is to me,
Yeah.
because the fire side is that emergency, the personal training, the fitness side is the preventative side. So it just kind of made
Gotcha.
sense together.
Yeah, yeah. And that was going to be one of my follow-up questions. Like, as you were studying for the EMT and you're doing the physical training certification at the same time, in your mind, like the way your mind works, you had already made that connection that, hey, I'm going to be kind of delving into something similar, but you were making the connection at an early stage.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. I didn't really think about it like
Yeah,
now, but it was just a natural like
yeah,
progression for
yeah,
me.
yeah. 'Cause I think that's really who you are. Like, this is part of you evolving into your fit, right? The thing
Yeah.
that fits with you, that fits with your purpose. So the question that I have for you is, what are some of the things that you enjoyed the most about being a firefighter, right? Firefighter, EMT, like what were
Mm,
the things that you came home and you're like, you know what? Um, I could look myself in the mirror, I could lay my head on the pillow and just say, you did well today, Eric. Just knowing that, hey, I'm willing, whenever I'm called upon, I'm happy to just give my all.
I mean, the action truthfully is exciting, right? Like
Hmm.
gearing up, and then, you don't want to see anybody's house burned down, but I've
Right.
noticed a lot of people were maybe too excited, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I actually loved going into house fires, but it was
Yeah.
exciting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the position of fireman for a lot of people fills some kind of self-esteem void.
Hmm.
I'm a fireman, I'm a paramedic, da, da, da,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's their identity. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
this is just what I do. It's just a job,
Yeah.
you know?
Gotcha.
So I
Gotcha.
didn't want to derive, and I actually went through some of that where I like proud to be a fire, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized
Yeah.
it's just a job. It's just what you
Yeah.
do. I get paid,
Yeah.
get benefits. Is it dangerous at times? Yes, but 90% of the time it's, people that don't need you that call you. It's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like crying wolf, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
911 is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 10% of the time is like really serious stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so much of what I saw helped me, I guess, develop more courage.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't I didn't think I was a particularly courageous person. I had a lot of fear growing up as a kid, a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
trauma and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I just
Yeah.
carried that into my adulthood.
Yeah.
But knowing that I'd be willing to potentially sacrifice for a complete stranger
Mm-hmm.
and not be freaked out and turn around and run out the house,
Mm-hmm.
that just provided me a lot of, I guess, more confidence in the fact that
Yeah.
I'm doing the right thing, that I'm here
Yeah.
for the big reason.
Yeah. No, I think that makes perfect sense, man. It makes perfect sense. So you take the EMT, you get your EMT certification, and I'm assuming you got your physical training certification, all right, at the same time. So how are you starting to like marry these two things as you evolve, through your career?
I was really lucky, maybe because I didn't have any preconceived notions or limitations.
Mm-hmm.
I just happened to go into like one of the highest end gyms in Arlington. I
Mm-hmm.
walked in, I did purposely walking in with my uniform on
Mm-hmm.
after work, and I
Yeah.
talked to the personal training manager and the owner, and they literally hired me on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And they paid really well, like compared
Mm-hmm.
to, you go to Goals, those poor trainers make like 15, $20 an hour,
Yeah.
and here I am getting like 60, 70, $80, just
Yeah.
first job
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
certification.
Right.
But it did help that I held the
Yeah.
position of fireman and medic and
Yeah.
EMT at the time. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why. And, I guess I'm a pretty decent talker. Like I
Yeah.
don't have fear approaching
Yeah.
anybody or talking to
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
I guess I could come off as free and easy,
Yeah.
which keeps some people feeling like easy around me. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just how easy it was for me. And I didn't realize that you know, someone in my situation with a fresh new certification probably wouldn't walk into a gym like that, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have those limitations on me because I didn't know any
Yeah.
better. And I think it's
Yeah.
really good
Absolutely.
not to know any better in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You just do it.
Absolutely.
You just go
Just
and
do
do
it.
it. Yeah, and if it
Just go
works,
in.
it
Yeah.
works. If it doesn't, you find something else.
So when you got this job, this was sort of like the moonlighting side hustle,
Yeah,
second job as you're being a firefighter.
I got it
Okay.
right away. I was
Yeah.
double jobbed right from the get-go.
Yeah. So were you doing that before you start to like the next evolution took place where you're like, I got to start
So,
just
so about 11, like after a decade of doing both, I mean, I'm on shift work. I'm working probably 80 to 100 hours without regular sleep for over a decade, work every single day.
yeah.
And at some point, the last couple of years in the fire department, I had that same feeling I did at the earlier job where I didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it really just came down to, man, all this like I'm seeing the same people, the same patients over and over again, the
Mm-hmm.
same sickness, the same disease, the
Mm-hmm.
same violence, all of it, just all the same. And it just really dawned on me that none of this has to happen.
Yeah.
We don't have to be sick. We
Yeah.
don't have to treat each other poorly. We don't,
Mm-hmm.
none of this has to happen. It's all preventable. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that those past couple of years, I had known that, but I wasn't able to suss it out. Why was I miserable going into the fire department? I just didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
be there.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I need to make a change, but I was scared because
Mm-hmm.
9 more years, I got this great retirement. I could
Yeah.
retire. Actually, this year is my 20th anniversary. So
Mm.
I can retire this year. In October, my pension kick in, right?
Yeah.
So people were, you know, telling me I should definitely have to stick around. I was just mulling it over in my head.
Yeah.
And then I remember one Christmas Eve shift I was working. This is toward the end of my career.
Hmm.
And my lieutenant, who I really loved, he was having some weird health issues. He was sleeping, he slept much more than usual, and he was just not himself. And it turns out he was rushed to the hospital like the day after our shift, and they wound up finding a glioblastoma, cancer in his head.
Mm. Mm.
And this was year 10, and he fought for a year, and then he went into hospice.
Mm.
And on his first day in hospice, this was like I think his hospice was on a Thursday or Friday, he went into hospice. He didn't last more than 2 days, and I was going to go see him that weekend.
Hmm.
And I got a text at like, I don't know, after midnight saying, Lieutenant died and Lieutenant passed away.
Hmm.
And I just kind of lost it. And
Hmm.
then that's when I decided I'm not going back.
Yeah.
Made the call like 2 in the morning to my battalion chief, whoever was on shift. I said, I'm not coming in tomorrow. In fact, I'm not coming in ever again.
Wow.
And there was a conversation, and the next day there was a conversation, and all the higher ups were talking to me. Look, we'll create a new position for you, health and wellness coordinator. I was kind of like the health fitness guy. That was my reputation. I did
Right, right,
Ninja
right.
Warrior. I
Yeah.
did Ninja Warrior a couple of times, and I
Hmm.
actually got on TV a couple of times. So it
Yeah.
was kind of a big deal within our
Yeah.
department. Not a huge
Right.
deal, but people knew.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and I would help people with their nutrition or working out or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's when just they were trying to convince me to stay.
Hmm.
And they said, you know what, take family leave, medical act, 3 months, take as long as you need. And then when you're ready, come back. I said, so you're going to keep paying me? They
Yeah.
said, yes. I'm telling you, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, just all right. But I'm
Just try
telling
it
you,
out. Yeah.
yeah, try. So for 3 months, I knew I was not going back. So I had to hustle. So
Yeah.
now I'm working part-time as a personal trainer, but I know I needed to amp that up because I need a new source of income.
Yeah.
So yeah, I branched out into another studio. I started getting more clients, and I was making a pretty decent living just off of that. And then when the 3 months was up, I told him I was not coming back, like I told him 3 months earlier.
Hmm.
And that's when I, separated from the fire department. And then I started working in a private studio or like a, small gym training one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't the ultimate goal because I had to do something about it. So I needed my own space. So
Hmm.
then the next couple of years, I hustled. I learned how to write a business plan, how to look for, retail spaces for what I wanted to do. I
Hmm.
studied the industry, and I've hustled my butt off, listening to Gary Vee all the time too for that motivation.
Absolutely.
And it paid off. Like within a couple of years, 2, 3 years, I found this location,
Hmm.
and here we are today.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Do you feel like, your journey, man, from as a kid from Queens and everything that you've been through, going out to, Western New York, going up to Schenectady, moving down here, and now where you are, like when do you ever reflect on that and kind of get a good feeling for how all this happened?
Yeah, I can see the ups and downs of everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
right now I'm just working on becoming a better at business. Like
Hmm.
I hustled so hard to open the place that I totally didn't know what I didn't know and realized, oh, now I have to learn how to run a business and do it
Hmm.
well. And
Yeah.
that is where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. I'm
Yeah.
not where I need to be or want to be.
Yeah.
But that's the price you pay for opening up your own business
Yeah.
and doing most of the stuff on your own. It's
Yeah.
you're everything. You're the janitor,
Yeah.
you're the
Yeah.
secretary, you're the host, you're the teacher, you're the coach,
Yeah.
you're all of it at once. You're the bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't know how to get good at these things, but uh, just like opening this place, you just gotta look for the answers and then
Yeah. Yeah.
figure it out and fall
Yeah.
and fail and lose money, make
Yeah.
money, lose money, make
Yeah.
money, lose money
Yeah.
until you're, doing
Yeah.
what you need to keep the things going.
Yeah. But what I'm hearing from you also from your story is that you have those skills of being a lifelong learner, right? Of being a quick adapter. right? Of being able to pivot and to learn. I think you talked about how you read incessantly as a child, and I think that opens up, this it unlocks this whole ability to learn quickly and to adapt quickly.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm a huge believer that you can do anything and everything. But
Hmm.
honestly, my bugaboo, the thing that's been an obstacle until recently was finances. We never
Yeah,
had a lot. So, I mean, like I said, garbage bags, homeless
yeah,
for a while. When we
yeah,
lived in Colorado, we were homeless for a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
So that Goliath has always been there. And that's the
yeah,
one I'm getting over now and really
yeah.
realizing, first of all, your past doesn't dictate your future. And I already know
Right.
this in so many other areas of my life, but
Yeah,
the economic, financial side and the business owner side, it's
yeah,
really tough, because
yeah,
it's been on me, weighing on me for decades. So
yeah,
I'm shedding that now and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
realizing it's the same thing that when I wanted to leave my job and find a new position, when I didn't want to be sick anymore and I wanted to find the cure, you just gotta seek.
hmm,
Got to look for the answers and then you got to
yeah,
apply the things that you learned. And you're gonna, obviously screw up, but that's the whole
yeah,
part of the process is you got
yeah,
to screw up in order to figure out what works and what doesn't.
yeah. No, I really appreciate hearing your story, Eric, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us, man. There's a lot out of your story that folks are gonna, it's gonna resonate with people. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful story. Um, and so how are you and your dad right now? Like
We're
where,
good. Yeah,
yeah.
he just celebrated his 80th birthday. One of the things I want to do is, I was really selfish growing up. Whenever I came home from college or
Hmm.
from work, I
Yeah.
would want to like go out, go to New York, see them, and then just go out and hang out with
Yeah.
friends. And
Yeah.
now I just want to be home with them. I want to take
Yeah.
them out, however
Yeah.
many years they have left on this earth right now. I want to
Yeah.
make it the best. They're like best. They struggled. They were working 7 days a week for 50, 60 years.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, I can't imagine like
Yeah.
having to raise kids in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful that
Yeah.
they did that. And so I want to pay it back in a
Yeah.
way. I know I cannot pay it all back, but I'd love to be able, I want to take them to Korea, for instance. I
Yeah.
want to, move them here closer to me. I want to buy a house, a big house, and have them here locally
Yeah.
so that,
Yeah.
I can take care of them when they need. So that
Yeah.
is my next big goal is, all right, I need to do this. So this
Yeah.
is the plan. Just like I knew I wasn't going to be sick anymore.
Yeah.
This is kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, okay, stop the financial pressure that you and the voice in your head, the devil's in your head telling you
Yeah.
you got to be anxious, you got to be scared, you got to be
Yeah.
no, cancel,
Yeah.
cancel, cancel. That's what I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
picture a button that says cancel. I press it 3 times.
Yeah.
Say, devil, get out of my damn head.
Yeah.
Like don't bring that here.
Yeah.
That's not God talking right there. That's
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah.
That's old
Gotcha.
stuff.
Yeah, man.
So yeah,
Yeah.
right now that's the ultimate big goal is to show my family like the best, however X number of years left on the
Yeah.
planet. I'm going the
Yeah.
best.
That is so awesome, man. Knowing you, I have no doubt that you're gonna make this happen very soon. So again, thank you for being a guest on the podcast. This has been another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. I want to thank my guest again, Aric Lee, owner, founder of Evolve to Fit. We'll have your website in the description so folks can check you out. And thank you again, Eric.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man.